It's always humbling to follow a professor, especially having worked with him. We worked together actually on governance stuff 20 years ago or something like that. And what I was really thinking about to kick this off is a really, really natural segue between what Alan just talked about and what I'm about to talk about. And that took me a while to think about, but I think I have it, which is I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what I've observed and the company that I work for has observed about how leaders think and act and run organizations, whether it's companies, what have you. So here's my segue. It's really thinking about how leaders use their brains. The big difference is I have no scientific data in this to back it up. So it's all based on subjective experience over about 15 years of the company being in existence. So with that, let me jump in. I also want to thank Deborah Patton as well. It was really honored to come and talk about the work that I do. I don't get to do it in this type of setting. It's usually in a more business type setting where we're talking to a specific company and we don't get to reflect as much as I hope we can today. So I'm excited about that. So let me tell you a little bit about my story, because it actually plays into how I got to where I got at this organization called Yamashita. You'll also hear me call it SY Partners. So the punchline's already up on the screen, but there was huge potential when I was younger that I was going to be a jock, because in middle school, really before middle school, I was really good at Little League. And then it kind of teetered off there into high school. And actually in high school, I became much more engrossed in the computer. It is easily, anybody you asked in my high school, I was a geek. I was completely focused on it. And to be honest, socially, high school wasn't that great of an experience for me. But I really came out of my shell at Pitzer, and I credit Pitzer for really where I am today in a lot of respects, because it was a place that I think a lot of us had the same experience where we really could open up, we could be ourselves, and I got to be involved in the newspaper, The Other Side, working with Jackie on that, and actually Kristen, now my wife. We worked on the paper together, worked in governance with Alan. I actually was thinking about that this morning when Laura was talking about the Student Senate. There was another fellow student, Peter Cohen, and I, who ended up redrafting the Student Senate bylaws because we felt that there should be propositions, that students should have the right to have a proposition and put on the ballot and get something passed, which I think is still, which I find kind of ironic, because I really don't like the proposition. I think it's a total mess, and we shouldn't have it. So hopefully that won't occur here at Pitzer, because we had this foresight to do that. So anyway, great experience at Pitzer. And then the journey to where I am today is extremely well planned out. Very, very logical. Thomas spent a little bit of time talking about it, but right out of school, I went back to my roots of being kind of a geek and went to a small little company. We were making things for the Macintosh. I did have a dream to work at Apple someday, and I got to do that for about 3 years. And I worked on the Newton, which was this handheld computer that didn't work. But we all say who worked on it, because I remained friends with a lot of those people, that we paved the way for others, iPhone and all those things. And I did that for about 3 years, and it's at that point, and this is again a testament to Pitzer, that it was really the experiences I had at Pitzer around giving back to the community, about being involved in the school, about being involved in helping others, really, that I ended up leaving Apple right around, I think this was around 1996, to start a nonprofit with a Pitzer alum and my best friend today, or one of my best friends today still, Jason Singer. So we started this nonprofit. Then Kristen and I realized we wanted to stay in San Francisco, so we were trying to figure out how to do that while also running a nonprofit. And that was challenging. So then I did some more startups. One failed, one sputtered. And then I found SY Partners, or Stone Yamashita Partners. You'll hear me call it both things. We're in the midst of changing the name to SY Partners to reflect broader than just two people. Stone Yamashita is two people, the last name of the two founders. And I had met the folks from Stone Yamashita at Apple, because they were former Apple people. And I was there for a while doing some work, and I'm going to talk about what we do. And then I left again, so to do another technology startup, which is currently sputtering, and then I came back. And the reason I came back, and one other side note is that I worked with SY Partners when we started Chalk because the team actually designed our look and feel, helped us with some strategy. So I had this path along the way of always being associated with this company. And when I really think about that and reflect on it, I think it has a lot to do with what I learned here, which is we have this unique ability at Stone Yamashita to work with some of the largest companies in the world, some of the greatest nonprofits in the world, and we've touched on some political organizations as well, but to really try to help them affect change, and change in a really amazing way. So working with companies around sustainability, working with companies around building better cultures for their employees, and then working with companies to actually help them create value. I mean, for the most part, about 80% of our work is with companies. So at the end of the day, we're helping them create value, but we're trying to do it in a way where they're thinking about the greater good and they're thinking about what their role is and what their place is in society. So that's my story. It's also, I think, important because SY Partners is a place that really cherishes people with a diverse background, with a resume that you can't really follow, that doesn't have a lot of logic to it. And so that's good for me because if you look at my chart, it's all over the place in a great way. And I've just had all these great experiences, and it's led me to Stone Yamashita. So just really quickly about the firm, and then I actually want to spend the rest of the time, I was really thinking about what could create the most value for everybody in the room. And so I've kind of broken it into two areas. One is I want to talk a little bit about a trend or a turning point that we've observed over the last 5 or 10 years. And then I want to spend the rest of the time talking about how we help leaders think about how to lead in better ways, and actually share with you one of the methods or tools that we have. And I've put a lot of it in here so that I hope that you guys can take it and use it and think about it in what you do every day. And it applies to individuals, organizations, companies, nonprofits. I think it really applies to political organizations in some ways. So we'll get into that. But just quickly, we're 15 years old. We're in San Francisco, New York. It actually began as a design studio. And that's an important part of what we do because about a third of the people that work at Stone Yamashita are designers. They're information designers, they're graphic designers, we have some architects, they're spatial designers, and that's a really important part of what we do because when we work with executives, we generally work with CEOs and their leadership teams. We're really trying to use design as a way to change the way they think about things, reframe things. Ironically, we very rarely use slides. We really try to create experiences to shift mindsets, and I'll talk more about that. So we're 70 people today, and then just that was really to remind me to tell you why I sometimes say Stone Yamashita and sometimes say SY Partners. So they're interchangeable in a way. So what do we do? So what is this consultancy that's been around for 15 years? We're only 70 people. We probably will never be more than 100 people. What do we do every day? And we spent a lot of last 3 or 4 years. We really spent a lot of time thinking about this because the type of work we do varies depending on who we're working with. But people always want to know, like, tell me what you do. What do you actually do? And we actually distilled it down to this, which is we work with leaders to imagine and create new value. So new value, what's new value? Well, new value could be help us think of a new product, help us think of a new service for a company. But actually more than that, new value is help us think about how we can create a better culture for our employees to work at so that they then want to do better, not only for financial results, but also for the communities in which we operate, the people in which the lives we touch, and so forth. Create new value can be help us rethink the way we talk about our nonprofit so that we can better educate our constituencies, better educate our funders, better educate anybody who needs to know about us so that we can thrive and be successful. So new value can be about new products, new customers, a new culture, a new way we work or interact with government, what have you. And the reason that's important, that it's so open-ended, is if you take a look at the type of organizations we work with, it's across the map, which for me is really, really exciting. As you saw from my chart, I like to do new things and I like to keep fresh with things. And what's nice about Stone Yamashita is one day I can be working on a project for Nike and the next working with Center for American Progress. Center for American Progress is a think tank in Washington, D.C. started by John Podesta, who was Clinton's last chief of staff. He started a progressive think tank after he left the Clinton administration. He actually headed up Obama's transition team. And so literally, at one time, this is 3 or 4 years ago, I was working on Nike one day, half the time, and then Center for American Progress the other half. And it's just this amazing combination of being able to think through things. So as you can see, a lot of big companies on here, but also gotten to do some great things with organizations like Human Rights Campaign, San Francisco AIDS Foundation, PBS, and so forth. I'm going to talk only about 1 or 2 of these because I don't want to spend time talking about the work we do. I want to spend more time talking about the approach that we take, because I think that approach is something that literally no matter what you do in your life every day, I think there's something of value in the way you think about it. The way you think about yourself as a leader, the way you think about others in your organization as a leader. So what has changed for leaders today? Well, this we could spend hours talking about given today's climate. So I'm not going to talk about the economy that's changed. I'm not going to talk about global workforce or globalization that's changed. I mean, those are all very, very important things that have changed, that have definitely changed. But what I am going to focus on is something that we started seeing probably 5, maybe even 10 years ago, which is a series of events that started to help us really think about how could we actually help companies in different ways? How could we consult, be these business consultants or strategist consultants? How could we do it in a completely different way? So it's not a traditional consultant who comes in and says, here's the deck, and we are smarter than you, and you go do this. We'll go into our office and think, we'll give it to you and go try to make it happen, which is a lot of consultancies work, some of the bigger ones. So some of the things that we started to see out in the world are, some of these things some people will know more about than others, but I'll just touch on them briefly. One is this whole notion of open source. So people sharing information in a way that is allowing people to build new products like a Firefox. That logo on the left is a browser, totally open source. So what that means is it's not a commercial entity. It is all about sharing information to create something even better. Wikipedia, I'm guessing some of you have used that. It's on the web. It's this whole encyclopedia that is completely powered by individuals. And it is self-policing, so if someone puts up wrong information, another person will take it down. And for most of the time, it's been a pretty powerful tool that even Microsoft, who built this great product called Encarta, had it around for years, they finally decided, you know what, in this day and age, to have an encyclopedia and have all these people spending dollars trying to make an encyclopedia doesn't make sense because of things like open source. So that was one trend we saw. The other trend we started to see is the democratization of content. So the fact that anybody can create content now. So you have a little flip camera, which is a little handheld camera. You have things like YouTube, even some more recent things that are up there. You have blogs, and we've all read about it, and it's definitely something that's, I think, happening more and more. So we saw that trend. We also saw a trend, which I think is really kind of connected to these other two, but a really powerful one, which is collaboration. And real open collaboration. If you think about Obama's campaign and the way that the campaign galvanized everyone together, it was all about collaboration. It was about using technology, sure, to bring people together, but what it was really about is getting people together who had never been together before to fight for what they believed in, and doing it in a collaborative way. It's not all about online. The one that I think is kind of an interesting one is, I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, but Team in Training. So Leukemia Society has been doing this for years, where they get people together to train for a run, to train for a ride, and what have you. To me, that's an amazing collaborative event that's happening, not online, not technology-based, but a great example of it. And then the last one is co-creation. So co-creation of content, of thinking is happening, again, on and offline. The one on the bottom actually is probably the most interesting one in some respects. So IBM has, and we're working with them on this, something called Smarter Planet. And it's all about, they started to look at, as an organization, the power and the reach that IBM has. So it's and you'll hear me talk about this a little bit later too, the power to do good when you're that large. If you really are committed to it, IBM has the power to do many, many amazingly good things. And John Iwata, their head of their global marketing head, is really behind this and really passionate about it, as is their CEO. And so this whole Smarter Planet campaign they have is about teaming up with other organizations, with municipalities, with cities, to help figure out the problems of the cities, of countries, of corporations, and so forth. But doing it in a way that they're sharing a lot of learnings. They're very open about it. So it's kind of bringing all these things together. The other two are just smaller examples. Blurb, I don't know if anybody has used Blurb. It's a tool for publishing your own book. And it started out as just a way to literally make your own book and then publish it and sell it. They're now looking at, well, how can we actually have multiple people from around the world collaborate to write a book, and then they publish it for you. You go to their website, you print it, and everybody can actually get copies of it. They did that with the Obama campaign. I don't know if it was a campaign or just some individual writers, but the day after the election, you could go on to Blurb, enter some content in, and then there was an actual book that was published that told stories of everybody's experiences from the election. And they literally published it within days after the election. So we looked at all these things and we said, okay, these are all trends. These are things that organizations, companies, a lot of nonprofits we talk to are thinking about all these things quite heavily. And we thought, well, what does that mean for consulting? What could we do differently about how we consult? And so we started asking the question, how must leaders adapt and lead in new ways? And so what I'm going to actually walk you through, and this is the title of the presentation, is how can we help them on this journey, is an approach that we use that actually takes into account all those different things I was talking about: collaboration, co-creation, openness, things that actually consultancies, especially strategy consultants that come into big companies and big organizations, don't generally talk about, which is let's share information, let's be open about what we're challenged, what we're faced with. And this is literally talking to CEOs about this. And so it's this approach that we call it, it's called See, Believe, Think, Act. And I'm going to walk you through it and then give you a couple of examples of what we've learned from it. So, 2 minutes? Wow. Okay. We'll go quickly. So what we find is that when organizations are looking to innovate, to create that new value, to create new experiences for people, that most companies and organizations, and a lot of nonprofits we work with, this happens, they go straight to act. So they say, oh, we need to raise $10 million for donors. We're a company, we need to come out with a new product by Q2. Everything is so focused, usually by calendars, that people think about a few ideas and then they go straight to act. And so what happens is, you do things the same old way that you've always done them. You do things in a very status quo way. But what you don't do is you don't think of that big, rare, bold idea that will really allow you to act at a completely different level. So again, most people start a little bit here and then they go straight to act. What we found time and time again is that what you really need to be successful is you need to create believers within your organization, outside your organization, the stakeholders that you need to talk to, in order for them to think about what the really rare ideas, the bold ideas, what could truly change the way people think about a product, a service, an organization. Well, how do you get people to believe at that level? How do you get people to be that passionate? Well, that's where seeing comes in. You have to have people see things in new ways, take out constraints that they've had before, and really think about things in a different frame. And so, given time, I just walked through that pretty quickly. And so it's this whole idea of taking people through this journey called See, Believe, Think, Act. Well, how does that translate to thinking about leaders? And because of time, and also I brought a handout anyways, I'm going to go through one of these and then we'll have a whole bunch of them because they're fun and when you start to read about them. If you start to think about leaders that don't look at the whole cycle of See, Believe, Think, Act, you actually start to think about leaders that have different characteristics. So if there's someone who's just focused on act, they're adrenaline junkies. They're just completely, constantly exhausted, always trying to get tasks. From an individual level, you love the satisfaction of getting tasks done. Not a bad thing. You want adrenaline junkies in your organization, but you don't want all adrenaline junkies, because if you do, you're just going to keep getting tasks done, but nothing's going to be that innovative. Nothing's going to really change the way people think about doing things. There's frustrated visionaries who just focus on the seeing all the time. I'm going to run through these because of time. There's the fence sitters. What I do want to do, so you can see there's all of these. I'm going to give you a handout so you can read them because they're fun to read. There's the restless optimist. The reason there's the chuckle in the room, I do the same thing, is you start to read these and actually read them on different days. And you'll be like, oh, today I'm a cynical strategist. Oh, today I'm an exhaustive executor. What you really want to get fully engaged leaders is you want someone who's always thinking about this. It doesn't mean that every single day you're always doing See, Believe, Think, Think Act, it means at the end of a project or at the end of an initiative, as a leader, if you look at your team and you look at the organization, you feel like you've gone through this cycle, and it might be repeated times. So, given timing, I do want to run through this because I think it'll be a good example to show how this goes into play, how this works in the real world. So I actually picked GE. I thought a lot about what company or organization should I pick. I was thinking of picking the work that we did with Center for American Progress because I think it's in tune with the values of Pitzer. But I wanted to pick GE purposely. Big company. When we think about GE, we think about, there's nothing more corporate than GE. So how does a company change how it thinks about innovation as a company as big as GE? And so what we actually ended up doing with them is they hired us to help them do that. And we did a project with them. It was a week-long project, and it was designed to teach leaders. They handpicked about 12 leaders to go through an experience to help them think about how to be innovative. Not think about just metrics, not think about how we acquire some company to make more money or sell some widget, but really to think in an innovative way. And so they were given the assignment to think about things, think about how to create a new experience for the Latino market in financial services in the United States. And then 12 leaders were from GE around the world, not from GE Finance, no financial background at all. And so the first thing they got when they got to their hotel room was they got this book. So they came to our offices for a week. And this book, loosely translated, is how do we gain or obtain their trust? So in their minds, they're thinking new product for the Latino market in credit. Oh, maybe we should look at reducing the rate, the credit rating. Or maybe we should translate the brochure into Spanish. Or very, very tactical, very normal things to think about, but nothing revolutionary. And so we actually wanted to really talk to them about trust. And is that the thing that you should really focus on? Because if you can gain people's trust, especially a community that you haven't actually, especially in the United States, connected with, how can you go about doing that? So, really quickly, I know I'm over by 2 minutes. We spent the 5 days with them, and we really took them through See, Believe, Think, Act. They had spent a week before in Crotonville, which is GE's learning center. It's a famous learning center, great learning center. They had spent a week there, literally mound in PowerPoint data about this market. So they knew every single number about every single percentage of people who use a card, who don't use a card, who have an account, percentage of documented workers versus undocumented workers, etc. So they came in on Monday morning and they said, okay, we're ready. We have a great plan. We want to create a new credit card that has a slightly discounted rate and a couple other factors. And we said, no, you can't do that. We're first going to learn about the community that you're about to try to serve. And so we did this, something called a ringside that we do. It's a little bit hard to see in this picture. These are chairs on the left and right. And what we do is we take data, but we turn it into insights, and this is where the design and visualization comes in. And we actually made them talk about this and debate about it. So we said Walmart, the Walmart bank, so the retail giant offers money orders, check cashing, etc. What does that mean for your community? The rise of the megachurch. The megachurch in the Hispanic and Latino communities is rising tremendously. And so what does that mean? And in these churches, they have these types of services. So just some really interesting ways to foster debate among them. So again, seeing. They're now seeing things in different ways. And Skip, we brought in some speakers. They went and talked to eBay because eBay is all about community. This is the most important thing to me, which is we had the luxury, we were in San Francisco. So day one, at about 1 o'clock, they went out into the mission in San Francisco. And you can probably guess who the GE executives are. Susana Rodriguez on our right is our creative director. The woman in the middle is actually a guide that we hired, in the green shirt, to actually take them into the mission and have them experience what it was like to try to cash a check in the mission. And we picked different people. We had some people that were undocumented because they had made a strategic decision that they would work with documented or undocumented individuals. And we had them have the right ID, they had the Mexican consulate card. And so split into groups, and they literally watched the experiences they had. So one person had an experience where they went in, tried to cash a check, they had all the right ID, they were refused. Another group went in, cashed a check, the rate was, I think it was 10% cut off rate. Then we would send some of the GE executives in, we just did $10 checks, and go cash a check, don't take any ID. Went in, no problem, lower rate. And so they experienced this, and there was one gentleman, it's not the gentleman on the left, but there was another gentleman who by the end of the day literally had come to tears. This guy ran plastics. The plastics group for GE in Hungary. I mean, he was like, his background was financial background. He was a numbers guy, not the most emotional guy in the world, not really connected to people, but he became so emotional it came to tears because of the conversation he was having with one of the workers. So that gets you to see and believe. Because now imagine the passion that this group has for actually making a difference and changing things. So fast forwarding, and I'll skip the rest, but we then took them through a lot of thinking exercises. So what could we do to create a great experience for this organization, or for the problem that they were trying to serve? And in doing so, they came up with some really incredible ideas, one of which they're actually implementing now, which is, then I'll end on this, they're creating a banking center that has three parts to it: community, engagement, and achievement. So they started to learn that community was really important, family. Achievement was really important because everyone they talked to, no matter what level they started at, were all about getting to the next level. I want to be able to have a bank account, or I want to be able to have a credit card, or I want to be able to send even more money home. And then the last was education, so educating on how to do that. So they're now actually building community centers, they're starting to build them here, where GE has a strong presence in Latin America already, a storefront presence. So one of the things that they had in Epiphany was, we have all this technology, we have all this infrastructure, why don't we have a web camera in our GE Money stores in Latin America, and why don't we have a web camera in our GE storefronts in the US, so that when people come in and do their banking and financial services, they can actually talk to people at home and see them for free, because the infrastructure is already there. So it's now, I'm not going to Western Union, which has no personality, no face to it. I'm now going to potentially go to, hopefully nobody works at Western Union. Now I'm going to go to a GE, and I haven't named it yet, but I'm going to go to a community center, basically, is what they realized, is that this has to be much more about community. So really, really short example of taking these people in a very short amount of time with very little money. This wasn't exhaustive research and so forth, but taking them through that see, believe, think, and eventually they got to act to actually implement.